Thank you, Umameshwar Garu and all the members of Council for Green Revolution. I can see that Dr. Tulsi Rao is there over here, and it's been a long time since I met him. And good evening, Tulsi Rao sir. So, and I think there are different number of attendees. I'm sure from different backgrounds, and I'm sure there are a lot of interesting sessions which were held. And sorry, I've not been able to visit the Earth Center, and that's on my list to do when I go to Sri Sailam. I'll hopefully, Umameshwar Garu, I'll be able to join your Earth Center and see the place what you're doing over there.
Welcome, madam. Welcome. Whenever you're free on the way, please drop in here. Thank you. Please, ma'am.
So just for those who are not very familiar with the WWF as an organization, I don't know why it's not. Just give me 1 minute. The slides are not moving for some reason. Is my presentation visible?
Yeah, now we
okay,
can.
Now it is visible. So for those who are new and have not heard of the organization, very quickly to let you know that this is an organization which is more than 50 years old. We celebrated 50 years in 2019. We were born in 1969 in India, and over 75 locations in India. We have our offices where we work on various programs. Like if you look at what the mission of WWF India is to stop the degradation of the planet's natural environment and build a future in which humans live in harmony with nature. In fact, if you look at what Umameshwar Garu was saying a little while ago, that the Glasgow COP26, which is going on, is kind of a key deciding summit, which is going to decide, I think, the face of the world, what is going to happen next. And it is a mixed bag of discussions which is happening, some good, some not very good. Our Prime Minister has committed, given a very, very ambitious commitment of going net zero by 1970. And we hope that we will be able to reach that, because there are so many other pressures and drivers that we have, which as a developing country, one needs to also keep in mind on. We need to develop, we need to have many of our, production sector has to work so that there is employment, and things like COVID, which has really hit hard on countries like India, on the population of so many people left rendered jobless. So we are always, as an organization, also working to reduce the humanity's ecological footprint, humanity's pressure on this planet. We work in very critical regions of India, critical landscapes, where we are working to protect the magnificent biodiversity. And that is why we say that we have to develop a world where humans live in harmony with nature. And that can be done. There are many successful examples of this happening now. So just very quickly, when I was told that, what is to talk on biodiversity and climate change, and I'm sure many of you here would have heard this word biodiversity, and everybody knows what biodiversity is. But what is the role of biodiversity? How does biodiversity help? So biodiversity boosts ecosystem productivity, where each species, no matter how small it is, has an important role to play. So that is something which we have to realize, that if a bee disappears today, that is a very big worry about bee colonies. Bee colonies are disappearing globally and also in India. Bee colonies are so it is a matter of concern. One would have not thought a small thing like a bee. What role do we have? Today, everybody talks about the huge role that bee plays in our food production. So these are very important. So biodiversity is important to maintain viable ecosystems, because biodiversity is what keeps this earth stable. And without biodiversity, everything will become corrupt. There will be overflowing of one species. And sometimes sometimes actually there is a disbalance, and no single species should be allowed to increase in number. There has to be a balance, because otherwise it could be that one species is overrunning the entire ecosystem, and that can cause a problem to other species. It can cause a problem to the producers. So there is a lot of this critical balance which we need to maintain. We need to understand the complex interaction which is there between all of these, including fresh water, including breathable air, which has become a rare commodity. I would say it's become very, very critical today. Like, we are talking about breathable air, because if you all have seen, like, this particular season, or have also read in newspapers, this season as it starts, places like Delhi and Gurgaon and all, they have really bad time, having the entire haze which spreads over because of crop burning, because of vehicular pollution. So everything is mixed together, and there is a huge big conundrum of all kinds of gases, which makes really life very difficult. In fact, today I read a very interesting article a little while ago, which just flashed on my phone, and Canada has declared its first patient due to climate change, which is very, very interesting to me. They had declared their first patient, which means that because of the increased heat, a place like Canada, which you think is extremely cold, and we all prepare to take lots of woolen if anybody is going to study in Canada. And here you are talking about extreme weather events where, because of the heat, Canada is saying that it is declaring its first patient which has been impacted because of climate change. That patient suffered a heat stroke, and that the doctor who's attending to them, Dr. Merritt, he has said that this is because the heat stroke is because of the climate change, because of the increased hot days in Canada, which is very surprising. And it was quite a shock to me when I read this article today in the morning. So if you look at what are the benefits, I think the benefits which biodiversity gives, and all of us know about it, nothing which I am telling you new, all of you know about it: the food, fuel, fiber. We have provisioning services that the biodiversity gives us, like production of food, or regulating services. We get control of temperature through water bodies, through forest, control of climate and diseases. Then you have supporting services like nutrient cycling and crop pollination. These are also, again, and cultural services. All of us, as soon as the pandemic got over, I'm sure lots and lots of us were all running towards forest, we were running towards beaches, we were running towards lakes. We wanted to all get out of our four walls of the house and go and be amongst nature, and take out that mask for a while, and at least sit there and breathe freely. So that is the cultural value, the recreational value also, that also one has to take into account. So all this, at what cost do we get? Completely free of cost, which we, I don't think, even talk about valuing. And valuation of this is a very, very complex science. A lot of people are attempting over it, payment for ecosystem service, but yet not very completely understood or not accepted also globally, saying that payment for ecosystem services is still a very debatable area, and not very many people are considering that even now. So WWF internationally has been coming out with a Living Planet report. Many of you may be aware of this. This is a report that we produce every 2 years, and it talks about planet's biodiversity, planet's environment, what is happening. It is led by experts from all across organizations and universities, academic institutions, research institutions. And this LPR, as we call it, is a health check for the planet, and shows how the natural world is doing today, what it faces, what are the threats it is facing, and what this means for us human beings. Ultimately, we always talk about us, isn't it? We are not bothered about what happens to the rest of them. So the conclusions and recommendations in this LPR are based on analysis of many, many measures of biodiversity. And one of the biggest is the Living Planet Index. So the last one which was published was the 13th edition. And this 13th edition has brought out very interesting and very stark and very shocking results. And what are those? The Living Planet Index is a measure of the state of the world's biological diversity and is based on population trends of vertebrates species, which includes both terrestrial, freshwater, and marine habitats. This has been adopted by the Convention on Biological Diversity, or as we call it, CBD, as an indicator of progress towards its 2011 to 2020 target, which is to take effective and urgent action to halt the loss of biodiversity. This is what the CBD wants to do. And this particular report that we have, which WWF comes out, this is used as a very key indication. In that, we also have the Red List Index, which is based on the IUCN. I think all of you must be familiar. IUCN stands for International Union of Conservation of Natural Resources, now called the World Conservation Union. It has a red data list of threatened species, and it shows the trends in survival probability. And the Red List index value of 1, if you look at over here, index value of 1 equates to all species having gone extinct. A constant value over time indicates that the overall, see if you see constant value over time, sorry, my cursor, yeah, it indicates that the overall extinction risk for the group is unchanged. If you look at these, sorry. And if the rate of biodiversity loss is reducing, the index would show an upward trend. That means that it is increasing over time. A decline in the index would mean that the species are being threatened and are being threatened with extinction, and at a very accelerating rate. That means that there is a lot of concern for that. If you look at the species habitat index on your left hand corner, it shows that human land use change and also increasingly climate change are altering landscapes worldwide. Using remotely sensed data and model-based predictions, they offer an increasing strong and near global capture of these changes to the land cover. So the species habitat index, which you're seeing over here on your left-hand side, quantifies the resulting implication for species populations. Say, for example, for thousands of species with habitats which are validated worldwide, there is a huge change. And between 2000 and 2018, the index has fallen by 2% increase, which shows that there is a remarkable decline, as you can see, in the species habitat index. And this is only increasing. Close to door. So if you look at the biodiversity intactness index, and this estimates how much originally present biodiversity remains on an average across the ecological communities within a region. It focuses on the effects of land use and related pressures, which have so far been the dominant drivers of biodiversity loss. So because it is estimated across a very large set of ecologically diverse and plant species, animals and plant species, the biodiversity intactness index is a useful index for ecosystem ability to provide benefit to people. So if you look at this index, it will be able to tell you that, world over, if you look at, I don't know if it is visible or not, the index, how it is coming down. In certain countries, the index is really very sharply declining, especially if you look at African, or if you look at your Asia Pacific. So these are a growing concern that there is a decline in the biodiversity intactness index. That means we are losing biodiversity at a very accelerated pace. It is on the decline, but we need to stabilize it. And if we start looking at the populations, if we start doing something about it, we will be able to first check the decline, start stabilizing the population, and then it has to head towards recovery. So that is why what Uma Maheshwar Garu was saying a little while ago, that we will need to see how can we halt this decline and how can we go towards a path of recovery. And this particular decade of 2020 to 2030 is going to be very critical. This programs like this COP26, the COP which is happening in Glasgow, is going to be very, very critical in what the major output is going to be, what are the leaders across the world they're going to decide. And it will be essential that we take action to change this trend and bend the curve of biodiversity loss. This means not only stopping the decline, but also making changes to allow it to recover. So this is what we will need to do. So this is definitely an SOS for nature. Over the past decade, human activities have destroyed and degraded species, degraded forest, degraded wetlands, grasslands, and which ultimately threatens our own human well-being. 75% of the Earth's ice-free land surface has already been significantly altered. Most of the oceans are polluted. More than 85% of our wetlands are lost. This destruction is led to 1 million species, almost close to 500,000 animals and plants and insects species being threatened with extinction over the next 100 years. And many of these extinctions are preventable, and we can definitely restore nature. I don't know if some of you have seen the film which Dr. Sir David Attenborough has recently come out. It was launched early this year, A Life on Our Planet. Last year, we launched the Our Planet series. This year, there was another Netflix WWF film called A Life on Our Planet. And in that, Sir David Attenborough has said that there is still hope. There are 4 major areas that we need to look at. And those 4 major areas are eliminating waste, minimizing waste. Definitely what the PM committed to going net zero. So globally, we'll have to work about that. Rewilding the wild, that is how we will bring back the species, and reviving our oceans. So there is definitely hope. If you look at the extinctions, they say that 1 in 5 plants are threatened with extinction. And the number of the documented terrestrial plants extinction is much higher than even for mammals, birds, and amphibians combined. And all of us know that plants are the structural and ecological foundation of all the terrestrial ecosystems and provide the fundamental life support on Earth. And they are vital to our human health, vital for our food and our well-being. Soil also is a very critical component of this natural environment. We have huge issues about soil fertility all over India. We have used excessively of all the chemical and pesticides and all. nothing which I'm saying new, it's not new science. All of us know. Over 500,000 insect species are threatened with extinction. And this decline is very high. I already talked to you about the bee populations and the bee colonies, which are rapidly declining in our country as well. And climate change is a big, big growing threat to nature. And recent analysis have shown that the combined effect of climate change and land use change is much worse than just the land use change alone. So the combined effect is going to be really, really disastrous. So what is driving this decline? Global economic growth in the last century has changed our world unrecognizably, driving exponential health, knowledge, and standard of living improvement. I think all of you will agree that we have higher, earlier there was higher mortality rate. Today our the generations which live longer has definitely increased. Our health machinery has also increased, and I think post the pandemic even more governments have been trying to improve the health infrastructure. But that has come, all this improvement on better access to facilities, better lifestyles have come at a very big cost to nature and the stability of the Earth's operating system. So values underpin changes in the society, which has led to human activities that are undertaking the direct drivers on nature. The main cause of this dramatic decline in species population on land is observed in habitat loss, overexploitation, climate change. All these are the drivers which are driving this entire. So I said at the starting that is biodiversity at the tipping point. It definitely is. It is a very, very critical and crucial time of in the Earth's in the planet Earth's history, where we are seeing almost close to 68% decline of vertebrate diversity, which is very shocking. 68% decline in the vertebrate diversity. So our planet operates as a living system, as we all know. Biodiversity is an important part of the system. So the direct threats, direct benefits which we get, we will lose it out if we continue with business as usual scenario, because we all are connected. Almost all aspects of human health and well-being, we depend on nature. And if you look at the risk from climate change and how it is going to impact all of us, increasingly we are going to see extreme weather events, which is something which is become a regular feature now. Just 2 days back, my colleagues reported from Chennai that there's huge flooding of the Chennai city, and the report which had very recently come out that climate change is going to really submerge large number of cities across the world. And sadly, many Indian cities were listed, like Visakhapatnam, like Chennai, some Kolkata, all these cities, Mumbai. They said that that's going to impact. So it is going to be very, very disastrous. And then we are going to see increasing number of such kind of diseases, because we are we are entering into spaces which were only occupied by animals earlier, and we are interacting more directly with animals, and this is causing the viruses to jump into human beings. And this is going to be a very, very difficult situation as far as human health is concerned. It is going to impact us more and more, and I hope that all of us wake up to this fact that climate change is ultimately also going to impact human health, and that we cannot be any silent observers, or we cannot say that nothing is going to happen to me. Climate change happens only in the Arctic and the Antarctic and the Himalayas, maybe what does it happen to me in Hyderabad? It doesn't matter to me in Hyderabad. In fact, I remember meeting somebody very early on when I came to Hyderabad, and one gentleman, and I told him that so climate change is going to impact Hyderabad also, and says, no, climate change can never impact Hyderabad. He was very sure about that. But diseases like COVID-19 is a reminder of the intimate and delicate relationship between people and the planet, and spread of zoonotic diseases definitely is going to be increasing, and climate change is going to act as a very big multiplier for these kind of zoonotic diseases. So what do we need to do? We need a new deal for nature and people. So what we are, that where we are talking about decline in vertebrate diversity by 68%, and so we have to go towards the positive side. From the negative side towards the positive side, there is definitely a lot of hope. We can reverse this trend, because biodiversity is, like I said, essential for food security. And one more shocking thing which I would like to tell you all is that the food waste, many of us do not put any focus on this, but today one of the biggest concern is that 1/3 of all food is lost or wasted. 1/3 of the food that is produced globally is lost or wasted. And in fact, in India also today, we are becoming a country that is bringing out a lot of food waste. We say that we have a lot of mouths to feed, we have a huge population to feed, but at the same time, I feel that there is a lot of food waste that we are also doing in India, and that food just goes directly into the dumps and does not end up anywhere. So that is also a growing concern. So if we carry on with business as usual, if our current lifestyle means that humans will need 1.6 times more than the amount that the earth can generate, it is like living off 1.6 earth, that what we are doing right now. And every year we leave nature weaker, we with fewer resources and less able to ensure for our future survival. So this underscores the need for a global new deal for nature and people, and we need to set there has to be ambitious goals by everybody. And this also doesn't mean that as this is a work of the government, this government can do, or I am not responsible for me, I am doing this, I am doing that. It doesn't work like that, because for both people and wildlife to thrive now and the future, and in the future, we need a healthy planet. As you can see, it is written over here, with rich variety of plants and animals, vibrant ecosystems, and like throwing a stone into a pond, the ripple effect of any changes touches every part of our planet. I think this is something which all of us know. So, people, if there are youngsters in the group, if there are people in this group, they can actually start developing, get an idea about what is happening in their own surroundings. What should we look at in our own surroundings? What is it that I can do about biodiversity? Can I understand what is there in my own area? Can I record what is there in my own area? This is very important. We need to know our surroundings. We hardly know our own surroundings. We talk about large pictures. Please do not talk about large pictures. If we start acting locally at our own level by understanding what is available, and if by just protecting, it is very heartening that when I get calls from local citizens of the city that there is a tree being cut over here, or somebody is just come illegally and chopping up a tree. It is very heartening, because you know that people are awake, people are aware and want to take action. So this is something that we all need to do. So that's all I had to say, and if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take the answers.
Yes, thank you, madam. It's a great and wonderful presentation. It's a synoptic view you have presented on what's happening around the world.